Hey, good morning, Lizette. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Ed. Thanks.
You know, I invited the Smiths and the Joneses over for breakfast.
Oh, boy.
Do you think we can put out a meal in about 20 or 30 minutes?
I sure can.
All right.
And it's quite festive looking, and it's a great way for me to use some of my leftovers.
Let's go after it.
I'm going to make a torta verde, which is very similar to a frittata. Or in some ways, I compare it to a quiche without the crust. And you do it all on the stovetop, and then you finish it off in the oven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first saute some onions. Now I have some started already. I'm going to add a few more because I just love the flavor of onions. I think it really starts to get people hungry and looking forward for breakfast. So I'm just going to start sauteing these a little bit. And what I've done is I've incorporated a lot of greens in this torta, which is why I call it verde, meaning green. And I added several different types. I added some rainbow chard, which is chiffonade here, sliced very thinly like confetti. And then I'm adding some spinach and some cilantro. And so I'm going to treat these greens differently. And one of the reasons why I made this recipe up was because my kids were often turning their noses up at greens. So I wanted to find a really clever way to get the greens in there. And so this recipe has evolved as they've aged. And as they've grown older and their palates have developed, I've been able to add a little more texture and crunch along the way. So if you have really young kids, you might want to use one of the methods that I have here, which is simply to blend the eggs in the blender with your greens and make a green omelet. And oftentimes I call that the green goblin or whatever you want to use, the Incredible Hulk omelet. It appeals. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add when we cut the chard, we saved the stems, which are beautiful. You can see this lovely color here. There's yellow and red. And I love the crunch. And with Whole Foods cooking, you want to use the entire vegetable. So I'm going to use these. It's like a little bit the texture of celery. So you get the whole thing. And it really adds a lovely texture and color to the torta. So I'm going to just saute this a little bit. And while this is sauteing, I really want to kind of get the onions really limp and caramelizing a little bit. So while this is going, I'm going to get our eggs ready. And this is really easy. So I'm going to take it to the blender. Now you could whisk this up. If you're in a hurry, you don't really need to do the blender. Some people really like to do it this way because then they just can throw everything in the blender, blend it up, and then just cook the eggs. And again, you don't have to make this dish as fancy as I'm making. I'm having company, so I want to elevate it a little bit.
Important people.
Yeah, very important people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack eggs into the blender. So we have all the eggs in here. Then I add some spinach, which has been washed. Give this a stir. I don't want to forget about these guys.
I'll help you out with that.
You want to help me out with that, Ed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we have a little bit of cilantro here. Oh, don't want to miss these. There's two more greens here. I'm going to get behind you. And here are my spices. My dulse, garlic powder, sea salt. Coming around you. I'm going to do that right here. A little garlic powder, sea salt, and a little bit of paprika, which is a nice little addition. It's sort of what I've preserved from the original Spanish torta.
Lizette?
Yes. Oh, you have something for me?
I got a very special treat.
Ah.
This is saffron.
Oh, my.
And I bought this in Turkey when I was in Istanbul at the spice market.
Oh, boy.
For a special occasion. Smell that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's really rich.
Oh, thank you so much. You've now elevated me to a gourmet dish here.
Well, we're going over the top with
here.
this.
We don't want to
You got to
use
be
too much of
prepared
this.
for special occasions. When the Smiths and the Jones come over, we just got to roll out the good stuff.
With saffron, less is more. It's a very potent spice, so you just don't want to overdo it with saffron.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to blend this. And I like to blend it gradually and then kind of in there. Think that's green enough? It's pretty beautiful. Okay, so these onions look fantastic. Now I want to wilt some, like I say, I'm trying to give different textures to the torta, so I'm going to wilt these the chard leaves in the pan here. And Ed, would you mind giving me a little bit of water here?
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking
That
about
would be
that.
fantastic. Just fill that up for me. I'm going to use it in 2 places. I don't want these to be too watery because then my egg dish will be a little watery. But just a little sprinkle can always help if they don't wilt fast enough. They're looking pretty good. I'm just going to put just a touch of water here. And then I'm going to use this water in my eggs because I want them to be light and fluffy. If you add a little water, a lot of frittata recipes, they ask for cream, but I don't want to have cream in there because a lot of the people that are coming today, they can't do dairy, so we don't need to use the cream today. All right, let that go for a bit. Add water to this. About a 1/4 cup is fine for all these eggs. That's about right. All right, that'll do it. Okay, so I don't need to really cook these to death, really. It's going to go in the oven and it's going to cook the rest of the way. So what I'm going to do at this point, before I add that, I'm going to add a little garlic, just get that incorporated. And again, this dish cooks in 2 stages. Cooks on the stovetop, cooks in the oven. So there's no need to blast everything right now. Okay. My next step, in a classic Spanish tortilla or torta, you have potatoes. And I'm using some red potatoes that are sliced very thinly. So these are going to go in the pan right now after I put a little bit of oil in here to kind of add a little more so the potatoes don't stick to the pan. Got my potatoes over there? Thanks, Ed. Almost there. Come on, you. Okay. Why don't you set that aside for me? So I'm just going to put a little more oil in here, not too much.
Smell the garlic.
Can you smell it?
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious, isn't it? Now I'm a pretty busy mom, so I like to use the least amount of pots as possible and the least amount of utensils as possible. So I like to stick with things that utilize 1 spoon, 1 pot, 1 bowl if I can. But in this case, we have a few here just so you can see all the ingredients individually. So what I'm going to do here is take my potatoes and I'm going to put them in the pan. And I like to just put them in right here to get them to cook. They're thinly sliced, okay? So they don't take very long to cook.
Did you do that
at
by
all.
hand or with a slicing machine?
By hand, but you could use a mandolin.
Yeah.
So I'm layering these up here.
And it's different to do that one by one rather than just throw them in there?
Well, you know, I could throw them in.
Yeah.
If I was in a rush, I'd just throw them in. But I want to make it look pretty.
Right.
So, and there are 2 ways you can do this. You could leave this down like a crust, or you could lift them out. If these are a little thin, we'll just sort of see how it goes, and fold them in with the egg mixture. Okay? So I'm just going to let them cook here for just a minute. It takes about 5 minutes. And then I'm going to take my other mixture here with the onions and garlic and chard and the chard stems. Don't forget those. Don't throw those out.
Mm-mm.
You know when you get beets and you get the greens, don't throw the beet greens out, please. Cook them. They're delicious. And cook them the day you get them because the next day they're toast. They don't work so well. They wilt quite a bit. Okay. Now I have a wonderful additional ingredient here, and this is my Midnight Moon cheese. It's a local sheep's milk cheese, and it is just fabulous. It's very similar to Manchego. We want to keep things local. We don't want to go to Spain and get our cheeses. We want to stay local, so we got the Midnight Moon sheep's milk, and it's just fabulous. And you don't need a lot here, just a little over 2 tablespoons here. And depending on your palate, you may want to do a little more, a little less, but this is just enough. All right. So now, I'm getting my handy dandy spoon here, and I'm going to add my egg mixture. Almost looks like a green soup, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Don't eat it though. Eggs are raw. All right. My potatoes looking pretty good. You know what? I'm going to keep this as a crust. This is beautiful. Now, if you're worried about this burning, you could simply take the potatoes out and fold them in with the eggs. If you're feeling pretty brave, which I'm feeling today, this is going pretty well, you can keep it down as a crust.
It's going to bake,
Oh, yeah.
so it'll
It'll
soften
be
up.
beautiful.
Yeah, they'll work.
It'll be beautiful.
Crispy on one side and yummy on the middle.
And I'm going to add the cheese and a little bit of cracked pepper. All right.
Pepper has an amazing effect on improving digestion absorption. So there's studies that show fresh whole black pepper that hasn't oxidizes increases the uptake of all the nutrients by up to 20 times.
Wow.
So some people are delicate stomach, can't take much pepper, but if you and pepper get along, the more pepper, the more it boosts the nutritional delivery of this food. And it also is a contrast to the cheese and the eggs and the kind of richer food. So the more rich food, the more spice we add to kind of perk the digestive system.
All right. So see how lovely this looks already. Now I cook this on the stove for just a little bit. And just a little bit of salt. And then I cover it. Sometimes, if I just don't have time, I do the whole thing on the stovetop. Keep the cover on. And this is a Le Creuset skillet. It's sort of like a chef's pan. And what's nice about it is when you put the cover on it, it acts like an oven. And so it actually bakes right here on the stovetop. And when you lift it up, you have this great voila moment because everything kind of puffs up. It's very dramatic. So we're going to keep this on here on the stovetop for about 5 minutes or so, and then we're going to transfer it to the oven. All right. And because I just can't have enough greens, we're going to make a quick little salad to go with the torta. And so I chose arugula for its nice peppery qualities. It's really great green. And also some frisee, which is a little more bitter, but it has a really nice texture. It's very festive looking. Okay, so I'm just going to make a simple vinaigrette. Really easy. I'm just going to put a little olive oil in here.
Is this Italian
balsamic.
olive oil or California?
It's a California olive oil, yes.
Yes.
And then a little balsamic vinegar, and just whisk this up. Just going to give this a little taste. Okay. It's very nice. I don't want it to be a little more oil there. I don't want it to be too overpowering. There's enough flavor in the torta. Just want a little greens on the side.
The oil and vinegar also improve the digestibility of the chlorophyll in the spinach, the lettuce, the arugula. So chlorophyll has a lot of carotenes, and the carotenes are fat soluble. So if someone's just drinking green juice without oil, they're going to get less than half of really what's available. So adding oil, and particularly uncooked oil, to greens is most helpful.
Yeah.
And also it's yummy. And the vinegar too will help with breaking down some of the more starchy and fibrous materials.
That's right. So in addition to the salad, I'm also going to add a multigrain flatbread, which you will see again in our lunch. It's sort of to show you the versatility of this bread. And this acts as your toast. It's gluten-free. It uses a combination of ancient grains and brown rice flour and amaranth flour and a little sea salt, and you can add herbs to it and really dress it up. So this is a wonderful, versatile bread that you can use. You could toast it and make crispy, like pita chips. So it has a lot of uses. Today we're going to use it for breakfast. So I'm just going to put a little bit of green here, and then I'm going to show you the finished product. This one is going in the oven. And this, I'm just going to add a little bit of dressing, not too much. Okay. And then let me show you the finished product. This is our torta verde. Okay. And I'm going to cut a little wedge. Get a piece I like. Okay. All wedge bread. And there you have it.
There we go. Yum.
There you go, Ed. And I'll make some for both of you too. All right.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Wonderful.